Today, let's assemble a 36-inch Hampton Bay fan. So, a lot of work putting together a ceiling fan can be done pretty much, on your local kitchen table or bench or whatever. And there's a lot of assembly that you can do before you hang it. So, we'll start off by putting the brackets on the paddles. So this is a 6-bladed fan, so there's going to be 6 paddles and 6 fan blade brackets to assemble, and each one's going to have 3 screws for each one. And of course, each fan blade bracket has the fan motor screws already attached. Now, one thing you want to do when you're assembling this stuff is make your life easier. So when you do put the blades on, the blades are going to be your last part of what you're going to be putting on. So, whether you want to do this by hand or with a hand-powered screwdriver, take each screw and just screw them tight. So you break the little bond of paint and this little kind of like little isolators, like a paper or rubber isolator, and that kind of holds you back when you're assembling a fan. So you just want to break that bond loose so that these screws are way easier to put up in the fan. So that'll make life easier. Then you want to find your hardware bag, and your hardware bag, is going to look different depending on the model of your fan and stuff like that. So you want to find the fan blade screws, and they're going to be easily identified by, they're going to have like a fiber washer on them. So here's the blade screws. And you'll probably have a couple of extra bits, when you're done with the project. So, like I mentioned, each blade, it's got a white side and a color side, and the color side are all different. So, whatever you like, it's up to you. And to attach the brackets, they got little bosses on them, and the bosses face, toward the bottom of the blade and be facing you. So this is what you would be looking at, and this is the blade side. So depending on what side, you just marry up the bosses to the screw holes, just like that. And this will be going on the fan blade like that, on the fan motor. And then on the back side is your screw holes. And you can start them by hand and stuff like that, which is preferred to start them by hand. And sometimes you're going to run into little situations where sometimes the screw hole, all the threads are all full of paint and stuff like that, and they'll be hard to start and stuff like that. So you can use a hand driver or a powered screwdriver. And I got mine on 7. And you want them fairly snug. And for an added, because you want them to have nice and flush against the blade holder and stuff like that. So sometimes, more often than not, when you're done assembling the fan, it might wobble a little bit. So there's methods out there to correct the wobble and stuff like that. And usually sometimes when the fan is running, you can see which blade is higher than the other, and then you can kind of like take like a tape measure or something like that and hang it from the ceiling, hold it against the ceiling and touch the leading edge to see which fan blade is lower or stuff like that, or higher. And sometimes what you can do is you can like put some cardstock in between the blades if it's low, and you can bring it up a little bit. Or sometimes you can put a piece of cardstock on the backside on this screw to bring the blade down. It's a little trick. And sometimes you'll never get a fan to stop wobbling, because usually what happens is sometimes when the fan is running, especially on high, sometimes the wood flexes a little bit. And of course wood is all different and it's going to flex at different weights, but sometimes you'll never get a wobble out of a fan at all. And as long as it ain't excessive, you're not going to have any issues. So as we assemble the fan blades, and it's just one step closer to finishing the project. And of course, probably a month or so, if you use the fan regularly, you probably want to go back up to it. Just make sure everything is tight on it, because you're dealing with something new. It's never been assembled, it's never been run. Things might loosen up a little bit, and then you just want to make sure everything's tight. Because I have found in the past, when I would take a fan down to clean it, or take the fan blades off to wash them, that the screws, especially the fan blade screws, are loose to the motor. So, that's the last thing you want to do, is throw a blade. Because if you're wondering why I got 36-inch fans, it's because you have to size a fan to a room. So this is a small room that I'm in my bedroom. You might as well say it's a 9x9 room, 9 feet by 9 feet, square. So 81 square feet. Not really, because you'd have to measure the depth too, so that's a little more. But too big of a fan in a small room, it won't get the air. It won't have any airflow. You can have like for me, I had 42-inch fans in my bedroom, and you could have that thing on high, and you would feel absolutely nothing from it. And I thought it was the pitch of the fan blades and stuff like that, and it just wasn't the case. It's just that the fan was too big for the room. So these little buggers, these little 36 inches, are good for a 10x10 room. Then we're going to have an extra screw blade fan screw, whatever you want to call it, extra hardware. You usually get a screw too, or something like that, in case you drop one and it falls into the abyss. So we get one spare screw that you can put off to the side. So now the next step is to figure out, of course, you, the user on that end, you're watching, you're going to have to figure out whether you're going to have a flush mount or a rod mount. And for my installation, it's going to be a rod mount. So the remainder of the hardware is here. So for starters, if you're going to be a flush mount, of course, this step applies for both the rod and flush mount. You're going to have to take the hanger out of the canopy wire hider. And one is slotted, the other one is a straight through hole. So you got to take one out. So you got 4 screws, you only have to take 2 out and put them off to the side. So here's your canopy, your wire canopy. And here's your hanger. This is what you're going to be hanging no matter what you choose to install. You're going to hang this on your outlet or your electrical box in the ceiling. And it's going to have to be a ceiling fan rated electrical box. It's going to have to support weight. So to make your life easier, just take them little canopy screws and back them all the way out until you don't see it protruding inside, and that'll make your life way easier. And then the 2 slots, as you can see, that's what goes, and you can center it in your box. So if you're going to flush mount this fan, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pop this plastic ring out, and it's a 1/4 turn job, and then it comes right out. And you can see that you got mounting holes. So the mounting holes will match up to the fan motor screws. So on the fan motor here, you see how you got 6 screws? Just take any other of the 3. What's going on here? Ooh. Must have picked the scab or something like that. Anyway, pick any of 3, every other screw, and unloosen them, and then put your canopy on, and then use them screws that you took out to mount this, your canopy. So since I'm going to be using a rod mount, I'm not going to be using that. So now comes, if you're a rod mount user, a little bit a cumbersome step. So one thing you want to do, for me, I have to put the little trim ring back on. Make sure that's secure. Now you want to get your down rod. This is your down rod that I'm going to be using. And I have to take the pin out. There's a pin, the center pin here. I need to take that out. And put that off to the side because I'm going to be needing it. And then there's 2 little set screws. There's a set screw here and a set screw here. This will lock your down rod to the fan motor. So all you got to do is just loosen them up. And there's a little locking nut. you want to make sure that's loose too on the screw. Now, the next step is you need to have all your little bits handy. So this is the little screw hider for your main canopy. And then you need your down rod, and then you need your other little piece of trim ring if you're a down rodder. Now if you're a flush mounter, you don't need this part. This hides all of this on the top of the fan motor. So you're going to need this, your down rod, and your trim ring, and your canopy, all ready at hand. So the first thing you need to do is put your trim ring on so you can get that out of your hair. And this is just a press fit. It just sort of hangs out. So just have it set so that it hangs out. And it don't matter if you're square or anything like that, just as long as it doesn't be in your way. Then you take your down rod, stick that in there. Then you take your other trim ring, if you're a down rodder, and if you're flush mounter, you don't need this part. And you put that in like that. Now the next step you need to do is to fish your wires through the down rod. And there's a little bar in there, so you're going to have to like split the course. As long as you get them fished in there, it's okay. Then you got this little sleeve jacket. Make sure that's all the way toward the bottom of the fan motor. And you just pull all your wires up. Now that you got this in your lap or on a table, or you got somebody holding it for you, you take the down rod and insert it into the motor. Then you take your pin, stick it through the hole, and make sure you don't have your wires so they can get pinched. Don't pinch your wires. You'll see them in the hole if they're in your way. And don't force the pin because it's a loose fit. It should go in very easy. Just like such. It goes right in. You don't. If you have to beat it, you're not doing it right. Then you put your little clip on. And now you're almost all set. So now it's almost ready to hang. So now your little set screws, you need to tighten them up so you can secure the down rod. And you don't need to go crazy on the tightness. All it is just to secure the rod from rocking. Now you got them two little nuts on them same screws. Just take them little nuts that you loosened up previously and just snug them up to the fan motor. And you just take a little pair of pliers or pair of needle nose and just snug them nuts up. And that'll lock the screw from backing out, because the screw is only held on there by a couple of threads. And then there's another little nut. There's just like a safety Torx in there with a hex safety locking nut, and just make sure that's tight too. Of course, this one it's loose. So that's all it takes to get your fan motor ready. So now it's ready to hang. So now you can loosen up your canopy trim ring there, and this part, the smaller one, it just sort of hangs out here. That's all it does. And then you got your canopy. So now, when you're about to ready to hang this thing, of course the first step you're going to do is you're going to hang this. Now if you're a flush mounter, you're going to be like, how am I going to hold the fan and, you know, wire nut the wires to the box? Well, on all of these things, they got a little hook. One side has the hook. You see the little hook here? There's a little hook. You see it. It's easy. And that's all you got to do is when you got this on the ceiling and you're ready to hang your fan, you got your little helper. You just take your canopy while it's on the ceiling and you hook it. Just like that. And then you can do your wiring and then you're ready to rock and roll. Because when you're a flush mounter, your outside screws, this part is what holds your fan to the ceiling. If you're a down router, this part here is what hangs your fan from the ceiling. So I'll go over it again briefly. If you're a flush mounter, say this is a flush mount, you need to hang it and do your wiring. Just pick any one of your side holes, you know, and when you got this thing on the ceiling there, it'll hang it for you. And then you can do all your wiring. So, unless you got a helper on the same ladder with you holding the fan motor. But since I'm going to be using a down rod, you'll have this in the ceiling, and all you got to do, if you're a down router, on the ball of the down rod there's a groove, and they all have it. That's so when you start the fan, it don't twist and tighten up your wires and then eventually snap them off and create a short. So each one has a little groove. You see it right here. And that matches up with the little notch or a little protrusion on your ball mount. So when you hang this thing, of course this will be in the ceiling, and then you just hook it like such, and then you turn the fan motor until it locks, and then you're ready to rock and roll. Now since it's in your lap, or you got somebody holding it for you, now it's a good time to make sure that all your screws are all tight on the little reversing switch, because my other Hampton Bay, brand new one, the screws were loose. And of course you want to make sure your capacitors double stick taped to the fan motor, and you take all of your other little tchotchkes out for your pull chains and stuff like that. And then you got your little plastic baggie. I don't know why they put stuff like this on. Stuff like that. Kind of annoying. Now you're ready to put your light kit on. So your light kit comes with a spare canopy glow screw, so in case you lose it, it's in here. You can just leave it in there. So this is quick attach, so all you got to do is plug and play. You just match up your white wire, white to white, and it'll be black to blue. And just make sure that it's fully seated. And then you got 3 screws that you need to back out completely to install your light kit. If you don't remember where, that's a good spot to put your spare glow thing in there, if you remember that it's in there. But if you're not going to remember where it is, then you can just go ahead and take it out and put it somewhere. Now, the light kit has a notch in it, and that notch is going to go over the selector switch. It can only go on one way. It can't go on any other way. It can, but you won't be able to line this 2 out of the 3 screws up. So all you got to do is just smash your wires down to a certain point. Of course, you don't want to pinch anything or chafe anything while you're assembling it. And all you got to do is just press it on. Line up your screw holes. And then your light kit will be all set, ready to rock and roll. Now your light kit is ready to install. So before you're ready to hang this on the ceiling, you need to take off these little shipping bumpers. There's there's 5 little shipping bumpers and screws. So you're going to be discarding the bumpers and the screws. Of course, save the screws in case you lose a fan blade screw or one decides to disappear on you. So this will unlock the motor so you can put the fan blades on. And you peel off the little tag there and make sure you get all the remnants off of it, because it leaves remnants. Adhesive. You want to make sure that's all scraped off, because you might have a blade that might be cattywampus. And just to review, just make sure that your little the little thumb retainer screw here for your light is nice and tight, and your fan speed selector is nice and tight. And you can go ahead and back out your globe screws to make sure that's ready to rock. And you're ready to hang this thing. So for me, it's going to be hard to film this because the room is so small. There's really nowhere to film this thing. So if you're not qualified or you're not confident to be playing around electricity, make sure you have an electrician do this for you, or somebody who's competent, or your handyman and stuff like that. So the first thing you're going to do is, if you have a previous ceiling fan, make sure you shut the power off, make sure it's dead, you know, turn the light on. If it don't light, then you're good. And make sure the fan don't run, pull the chains and make sure it's off, because you don't want to be shocked. And then take your old fan down, or your old light, but you're going to have to make sure that your receptacle, or your outlet box, or your wire box is ceiling fan rated, because it's going to have to carry weight. So if it's just sort of hanging out there and it's only attached to the floor joist by a little tiny nail, then you can't use a ceiling fan on that box, because it will not hold it. So they make nice little retrofit kits that you don't even need to bust out the ceiling. As long as you got the hole for the box, you can get the box out in some way, shape, or form, and there should be enough wire where you can unbolt the box. And you can put the retrofit bar in there, and it's just a bar that as you tighten it, it spreads, and it's got little teeth on each foot, and it gets wedged in between the floor joist. Then you can mount the box, and then you can mount your hanger to the box and then wire it up. So when you get this up on the ceiling, and yes, these wires are way too long, so you need to size them to your box. And of course, you got this nice big canopy, so you don't need to cram all the wires up in the box. It's not necessary. As long as they fit within this part here, you're fine. So when you hang this thing, you're going to be having it hanging. And like I said, you're going to have to find, if you're a down router, you're going to have to, you know, marry the notch with the little tab here. And if you're a flush mounter, you can hang your fan with the little donger here that'll help hold your fan, and then you just slip your down rod over the thing there, and you're ready to hang it. So it'll be hanging from the ceiling like this, and then you can trim and size your wires. Now, if you have a switch box or a switch plate, one switch for a fan and one switch for a light, you're going to be tying your white wires. Your white wire will always go to a white wire. So that's easy enough to figure out. Now, if you have a switched fan and light, your black wire will go to your switched wire in your electrical box. You'll have to identify that. And if you have a separate switch for your light, you'll have to identify that, and then you attach your blue wire to your light. So usually blue is for a light, black is for the fan, and white is the neutral. So it's easy to do. And of course, you tie all your grounds together. There'll be a bare wire on the box or a wire hanging from the box that'll be either a green wire or a bare copper wire. You take all your grounds and tie them all together, and then you're dealing with stranded wire here. So with stranded wire, to do it correctly, sometimes to get a wire nut to work, you might have to strip these wires just a little bit more, and then twist them together. Twist your stranded wires together, and then you take your wire nut, either the ones that you saved from your previous fixture or your new ones. You stick the stranded wire in the nut first, and then you take the whole nut and wire and then twist it onto the solid copper, and that's the way to do the correction correctly. And you'll have no chance of having this work itself out. As you're twisting it, it'll lock it, and it won't be easily pulled apart. And then, let's just say, for me, I don't have a switch for the fan, so I have to tie the black wire and the blue wire together. And the same thing for that situation. Take your stranded wires, twist them together, put them in the wire nut, and then twist it onto your solid copper wire, and then you're all set. And then of course, like I said, you'll have to size your wires because these are extra long, and then you tie all your grounds together, and then your neutral, and you're all set. And then you just take it and you just bunch it up, or you can carefully put it back up into the box. If it don't all fit in the box, that's fine, because your canopy will hold the wires. You just don't want no wires sticking out or touching anywhere on where it can rub on the metal. And then when you're done, you just take your canopy, your wire canopy, and line up your little keyways here, and give it a little quarter twist. Then you can tighten up the screws, and then you can put your two remaining screws that you put off to the side, tighten them up, and then you put your trim ring on, your screw trim ring, and then you got a hanging fan. Now the next step you're going to need to do is put the fan blades on. So on the fan motor, it's got these little wings. There's little wings on each where you're going to put each fan blade, and then there's two screw holes. So on your fan blade, if you look at the fan blade, you see the notch. That notch lines up with the tab on the fan motor, and then you'll see right off the bat that your screw holes will line up. And then you go ahead and tighten them down, and you want to make sure they're tight. And then as you're working each blade, you want to make sure that all these little feet, they all line up together. Because since this is a 6-bladed fan, it's tight quarters, so each each one is going to be almost touching one another. It's going to be like a little 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter little gap. Now when you make sure, when you're putting the blades on, you want to make sure that they're all seated against the hub of the fan motor. So when you're assembling it and you put your next blade down, and when you're done tightening up, they should line up nice and flat. Now if you got one that happened to jam up on some paint or something like that, or didn't quite get all together, you'll see that they'll be like a little droppy. They'll be a little jarred. So you want to make sure that they're all lined up straight. And you put, you know, whether you got 4, 5, 6, you know, or 3 blades, and just make sure that they're all nice and secure. And you probably don't want to use one of these. You want to use a regular screwdriver to start each screw and make sure they're nice and tight, because it can be a little deceiving sometimes that you think it's tight and it's not tight. And like I said, if these don't all line up, you're gonna notice it when you start the fan and things go. So easy enough to assemble a fan, and these steps go for any fan. They're all about the same. It's not really a huge difference between fans. And that's all it takes to hang a ceiling fan. And then when you're all done, you just go down to your cellar or basement and flip the circuit breaker on, or switches, or however else you kill the power to your fan. And of course, most likely, it's not going to start up because it's off. So pull your pull chains, make sure that your selector, your direction selectors, to your preferred method. So in the summertime, you want to have your switch down. If in the wintertime, you have your switch up. And that's all it takes to install a fan. It's very easy. Of course, like I mentioned, if you're not mechanically inclined, and if you're afraid of electricity or don't want to mess with electricity, just hire an electrician or a good handyman that's not, you know, that's competent and of playing with electricity. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.